Hello, everyone. We are Group 14, and we wish you a very warm welcome to our presentation about Uber. We invite you to follow our presentation, which includes, first of all, the overview, Uber's strategy, the strategic problem we defined, our analysis, and in the end, our recommendations for Uber. So the 2009 founded Uber developed from a startup in San Francisco, California, to a multinational ride-sharing company mostly known for its ride-hailing services, connecting drivers and users to get from one point to another. It operates in more than 60 countries and 700 cities worldwide, and with its 110 million users, it generates roughly 14 million rides each single day. Overall, Uber employs roughly 22,000 people, which generating around 11 billion US dollars in revenue per year. But despite its growing revenues, it still struggles to keep the bottom line positive, as we see on the chart on the bottom left of the slide. So behind the facts and figures, Uber's business level strategy can be defined as a classical blue ocean strategy, as it developed a new ride-hailing business model differentiating itself strongly from existing cab companies. On the corporate level side, we identified that diversification is followed, whereas ride-hailing is still the dominant business, but Uber started to move more and more towards related diversification, for example with Uber Eats or Uber Freights, but it's still on the move to diversify even more and more to Uberize the world.
In this part, we identified what is the main problem the company is facing, and we have come to the conclusion that it is their business model. So, we have dived deeper and identified three main reasons why their business model can be considered as unprofitable, unsustainable, and even illegal. First, the company has many legal issues. Uber is facing many lawsuits from both their employees and their customers due to sexual harassment and misconduct. Also, the use of Uber was banned in many countries so far by policymakers, and now one of its biggest markets, London, is in jeopardy. Secondly, Uber has suffered huge financial losses. Only in 2018, it lost $1.8 billion. And in its 10 years since founding, the company hasn't been profitable as it is heavily investing in expansion and growth. But despite this, we have experienced a declining growth rate in the recent years. Finally, the ongoing scandals have contributed to the weakened trust in the company, which resulted in losing market share to the competitors. Also, drivers are handled as independent contractors, not employees, which prevents them to receive certain benefits that results in driver dissatisfaction.
So in terms of Porter's five forces, we have based our analysis on the e-ride-hailing industry, and that industry consists of companies using online-enabled platforms to connect between passengers and local drivers using their personal vehicles. Our analysis has shown that the industry is very unattractive, and I will explain this in greater detail within the next slides. In order to analyze the threat of new entrants, we need to have a look at the barriers to enter. And despite their massive size, none of the major players has been able to achieve significant economies of scale. The capital requirements for entering the industry are also very low, as the companies don't have any vehicles within their fleets, and the development of an app is comparatively easy. Customers also have low switching costs, and the only major barrier that prevents companies from entering are government regulations. For instance, Uber has been banned from operating in certain countries as they don't have the licenses that are required to offer transportation services. So overall, we can consider the threat of new entrants to be high, as the barriers to enter are low. It's furthermore important to analyze the bargaining power of suppliers, because they can impact industry profitability through raising prices or lowering the quality of the service offered. In terms of the e-ride-hailing industry, the drivers typically have low switching costs because they're using their private cars. There are many drivers available, however, companies are highly dependent on these because they need the drivers to offer their services. On the other hand, the drivers are moderately dependent on the industry, as in many cases, driving for Uber and Lyft is just a part-time job and they have other major income sources. So overall, we can consider the bargaining power of drivers to be moderate. Buyers, on the other hand, can put pressure on companies to reduce prices and impact industry profitability through this way. In terms of the e-ride-hailing industry, passengers are very price sensitive, which is caused by low product differentiation, low switching costs, and a high number of substitutes. For instance, passengers do not incur any cost when they register on the apps provided by the companies. Moreover, they have full information about demand, drivers' cost, and market prices, which also increases their bargaining power. So overall, we can consider the bargaining power of buyers to be high. Industry profits are further significantly impacted by the degree of attractiveness of the price-performance ratio of substitute products. In terms of the e-ride-hailing industry, taxi companies are the closest possible substitute. They offer very similar service, also in terms of convenience, and they benefit from being well established worldwide. Moreover, self-driving cars may become a future substitute. At the moment, however, public transportation as well as bikes and e-scooters impose a severe threat to the e-ride-hailing industry, as they are significantly cheaper and they are appealing to consumers that are environmentally conscious. So overall, we can consider the threat of substitutes to be high. In terms of industry rivalry, we can see that there are a few competitors, but that they are all having a very high market share, as for instance Didi or Grab. Besides, we've already analyzed the barriers to enter the industry, which are low. Moreover, there are price wars because customers have very high bargaining power and they're very price sensitive. There are also a lot of substitutes available, and the overall industry profitability is considered to be low. In fact, none of the major players has been able to achieve any profits so far. So overall, we can consider the competitive rivalry to be high. So after having done this analysis, we can see that the industry in general is a very unattractive industry.
Continuing now our external analysis with the Pastel framework, we identified that politics and legal affairs having a major influence on the industry, as local restrictions and regulations can lead to bans and costly adoptions for the ride-hailing companies. Here we saw already examples in the past from cities like Vancouver, Vienna, or just most recently London, where Uber was stopped from operating again. Furthermore, there's still a huge uncertainty how policymakers position ride-hailing in each country, as transportation company, as regular cab company, or even as technology company. In terms of economy, the demand for mobility is constantly rising, especially in wealthier countries with higher GDP growth. As a result, people having more and more access to money to spend on such services, whereas relative unqualified jobs can be provided by ride-hailing. Even changes in the societies play a vital role as well, as more and more people having access to smartphones and the internet, and therefore the potential customer base is increasing. In addition, the trend to urbanization and the changing lifestyle of the younger generation having instant access to services without waiting time is perfectly addressed by ride-hailing services. In terms of technology, the daily use of apps decreases the barrier to use such services, and as well future development, for example in self-driving cars, will definitely be a game changer in the industry. Either that ride-hailing companies develop themselves such solutions, or will be developed by the likes of Google or Amazon, or also very likely in a strategic alliance between them. Last but not least, the worldwide trend of increased sustainability will affect the industry more and more, as electric vehicles will be used in the future, and carbon dioxide savings or carpoolings will further be pushed ahead worldwide. Here we also identify a strong connection to lawmakers, as they set the pace for new ecological basic conditions in each country.
So we separated the resources as tangible and intangible, but we are going to focus mainly on the intangibles, as they tend to be more valuable to the company and are more likely to give a competitive advantage. So here we identified 6 intangible resources. The most important intellectual properties are the algorithms, the pricing and the routing algorithm. And their role is to fulfill the company's main value proposition for the passengers, which is that there are always enough drivers to meet the demand. The application software is also a key resource as it is offering a superior customer experience as they can easily order a ride, pay, and track their car. The brand plays an important role in the business model as this is what attracts the new drivers and customers for the first time in new locations. And since Uber was a first mover in the industry, the name has become a synonym for ride sharing as many people use the term taking an Uber for alternative rides. The data gathered from the customer behavior could also be valuable to the company as they could provide more personalized solution and services if used efficiently. And due to the first mover advantage and the network effect, the company has a solid customer and driver network that if handled well can give a significant competitive advantage. So the VRIO framework is going to help us identify whether the previously mentioned resources can give Uber a sustainable competitive advantage. First, let's take a look at the brand. The brand is something that can definitely give Uber a sustainable competitive advantage as it is valuable, rare, costly to imitate as it has developed consequently to be first movers in the industry, and also the management can exploit this key resource efficiently. Both the customer base and the data derived from their behavior can lead to a sustainable competitive advantage as they are valuable, rare, costly to imitate, and they can leverage on it. However, the driver network can only lead to an unused competitive advantage as the management cannot really exploit it that well since they had disagreements with the drivers. The intellectual property can only give a temporary competitive advantage. In this case, we are talking about the algorithms, since many other competitors use similar algorithms, thereby making it less costly to imitate. The application software, although it's very handy and gives a nice customer experience, it is not rare since a lot of competitors use similar applications, thereby it only leads to a comparative parity. So we have identified two main capabilities. One of Uber's most significant capability is that it is always bringing innovation and as it has managed to bring many software to serve one function. It is continually adding value and new features, services, and optimizing its algorithms. Through innovation, it offers services to existing needs in a different way that makes them different from their competitors. And also, they can offer lower costs through the means of innovation. The other significant capability Uber has is the diversified revenue stream. The diversified revenue stream makes them less exposed to external factors in the ride-sharing industry. They're also aiming for Uberization, which means that the company wants to be there for its customers every time and wants to take them from one place to another by the most efficient ways possible.
In terms of the SWOT analysis, Uber's internal strengths comprise its very convenient service. It's not only an on-demand service, but before the trip, users can already see what costs they will incur. The app also offers the possibility to track the driver's location via GPS. Uber further benefits from their strong brand name as they've been the first mover in the industry. And they also have a dual rating system which promotes trust between the passenger and the driver, as well as a dynamic pricing strategy based on demand. The internal weaknesses Uber tries to overcome include its weak corporate culture, which is marked by various scandals, including sexism accusations. Uber is also highly dependent on his drivers, and this becomes particularly problematic as Uber's drivers are not very satisfied. Moreover, another major disadvantage is Uber's inability to become a profitable business. And Uber is also only available to those owning a smartphone with an internet connection. So older generations in particular are more likely to resort to traditional taxi providers. There are also a couple of market opportunities Uber benefits from. First, the growing middle class in many countries offers the opportunity for growth. The growing middle class is also associated with increasing disposable income, leading to a higher probability that consumers will actually spend their money on convenient transport solutions. Further opportunities arise from the lower rate of car ownership among millennials, as well as self-driving, as Uber is already investing in self-driving and it offers the opportunity to significantly reduce cost. However, self-driving cars can also become a threat as they are a major substitute to Uber's offerings. One of the biggest threats is new competitors starting to offer the same kind of service, as Uber's business model is relatively easy to imitate. And the existing and new competitors pose a threat because they increase the risk of Uber losing further profits. The increasing political pressure also imposes a threat to Uber as it affects Uber's possibility to expand its services to more countries and actually operate in certain countries.
So moving on to recommendations for Uber, we identified three major problematic areas. The first one is legal issues, and the main problem here is how to avoid these regional states, regulations and restrictions that we have seen in the past. This could perhaps be resolved by a tight bond or collaboration with governments, and Uber could provide public transport via their platform and their existing network, and also on top of that could create a legal committee which engages in new law development. We have seen this in several examples by Amazon, who also created a legal committee that engaged in new law development closely together with local governments. This might give whole new access to new pricing strategies like subscription packages that also includes public transport, but also their traditional core service, the ride-hailing system, by paying a monthly fee. This would also lead to a very consistent cash flow stream. Next one is financial dilemma. The huge problem here is unprofitability, and Uber seems to not be able to get out of this hole of unprofitable years. Firstly, we think it's important that they stop cutting prices in order to win customers from competitors, because it seems like this doesn't work or didn't work over the past years. As a more long-term strategy, Uber could acquire or merge with competitors, which would lead to new scalability and profitability. Perhaps maybe a possible candidate for that would be Lyft or Grab, which Grab is operating in a completely different region compared to Uber. Another idea would be to acquire local options, which would further help in terms of expansion, but also Uber would be able to react better to local responses to local questions. In another long-term aspect would be the provision of whole new services like long-term car rentals and the expansion of their service Uber Eats, since it's estimated to create around $1 billion in revenue this year. This would also open new doors, whole new areas, and due to more advertising, they could use their existing user base to easily advertise these new services. The last part is the weak corporate culture, and we split it into the internal culture problem and the dissatisfied driver, the external factor. The prior one could be resolved by setting up an internal feedback platform or by hiring an independent counselor who could build this bridge between management and the employees. The latter one the dissatisfied drivers could be solved by increasing drivers' satisfaction by engaging into communication with them and perhaps developing a loyalty program that pays the drivers benefits or similar financial aids due to diligency of the drivers, and which would lead to this lock-in effect for the drivers them to not be able to change that easily. Thank you very much for listening, and these are our references.